Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope you're having a fabulous start to your weekend. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we are going to create 3 cards with the Hero Arts, my monthly hero kit. We're going to take a look at what's in the kit this month, and then we are going to create 3 cards using it. The kits are still available. This is the December 2021 kit, last kit for the year, and it is super fun. First, you get a 4x6 stamp set that has tons and tons of sentiments that are for so many different occasions. So 4x6, and there's some silhouette images in there, a lot of kitty cats, dogs, hearts, a key, and even a bird here. Bringing some white cardstock so you can see it a little bit better. There are 11 coordinating frame cuts to go with it, and then there is one large fancy cover plate die that will die cut out a fun background for a project. You also get a background stamp. This is 6x6 background stamp that has a whole bunch of buildings on there. I thought that was super fun. And then you also get some cardstock. This is the first time I've tried to get Hero Arts black cardstock, but it's always sold out. But I can see why, because this is nice black cardstock. It's very heavyweight, and you get 4 sheets, guys. They're 5.5 by 8.5 inch sheets, but you get 4 of them, which is really nice. You also get 3 reactive ink cubes, mini ones. Today's colors, we're going to do a little swatching. We're going to start off with our berry smoothie. Reactive inks are nice because you could watercolor with them. I'm going to grab my water brush. I need to refill it with some water, but I think there's enough in here to show you what it can do when you can blend. Now this is just my regular cardstock. I think reactive inks work better on a Nina cardstock or a Bristol Smooth. So it'll spread out a little bit more. The yellow here is Lemon Drop, and you can see you can watercolor with that as well. And then our final color is probably my favorite. It is called Fruit Punch. The camera is making it look like it's an orange, but it's actually a coral color. So it's like a cross between a orange and a pink. Really pretty. And so those are your 3 colors that are nice and bright, and I'll use those for my projects today. So we also go, before I forget, you also get 10 little mini clothespins, and this kind of coordinates with your background cover plate die. These are little clothespins, which are nice. I don't like usually putting clothespins on my card projects only because it makes it really bulky for mailing, but it's nice to clip things together with them. So I think and it's super appropriate for everything that you get in the card kit. So that's everything. We are going to jump in and get started with our background stamp. I have some Nina cardstock here. I'm placing it on my background stamp, and then want to add adhesive behind it. I'm kind of going to do this reverse. I bring back my stamping positioner from the reverse side, so the felt side's up. Press down really good, flip it around, and then when I open it, my background stamp's on the lid, but my paper is perfectly positioned where I want it. There's been a few times where I've stamped my background stamps and it was too short, and I missed some areas, so I found this is better for me to do it that way. I treated my cardstock with my anti-static powder bag because we're going to be doing some heat embossing. We are going to use VersaFine Onyx Black ink, so we'll ink up our background really good, and then we'll stamp this. We're going to create quite a few panels, 3 in total. So we'll stamp this, press down really good. I have to bring in my my Misty tool here, and I love the background and the way this looks. We'll set this aside, and I'm going to do one more. I think I said 3 backgrounds with the white. We're just going to use 2, but I'm going to bring in one more piece of cardstock, add adhesive behind it, and tack that down. I kind of know where my my impression is because the excess stamped on that grid line on the background of my Misty, so I know where to put that cardstock now. So now that we have both panels done, we're going to bring in some clear embossing powder and go over our stamped image. I think this is nice because we're going to do a little bit of watercoloring for our background, and when you heat emboss with clear, it kind of creates a well and it keeps from going outside the lines for the most part. I still go outside the lines, but it helps a lot. I went ahead and melted my embossing powder, and now we're going to jump in with our first project. I'm using my Hero Arts Circle Infinity dies, and we're going to take a couple, and I'm going to cut out a circle on my first panel here. And I'm going to put it actually in the bottom left corner because we're going to use the cityscape on the top area, and I'm going to also fussy cut out one of the houses you'll see here. So we're going to use this panel for 3 different purposes. So my circle's cut out. Now I'm going to bring in my reactive ink cubes. I like to put them on an acrylic block, and then I can use my water brush to do some painting. Now if you'd prefer to use watercolor cardstock to do this, go for it. But my watercolor cardstock is not white, so that's why I just chose my Nina. If you do use Nina, I do suggest not oversaturating your brush when you do your painting. Kind of go a little bit light, because this way it will really absorb and it won't bleed out basically. Okay, I sped it up really fast, and we're going to zoom in, but I'm just basically using the colors on my acrylic block to color in one of the houses that was next to the circle. I also brought in 2 extra ink cubes from my stash that were Hero Hues Reactive ink cubes. I have Pool Party and Key Lime Fizz. The first 2 on my block are those extra ones from my stash, and then the other 3 are from the card kit. But once I'm done coloring, I'm going to go ahead, and I'll list those below. I think they come in a 4-pack with other colors, but I'll list them in case you guys are interested. But I'm going to go ahead and use my scissors and fussy cut out this house. I went ahead and colored in the tree that was right next to it also. So we have a house and a tree, and I'm going to use that top part, so don't throw that away. Once I fussy cut out my house, I'm going to use my black memento marker and go around the edges, cleaning up my fussy cutting lines. And then we have a nice colorful house to put on our card. Okay, now I went ahead and stamped with Versamark ink on my black cardstock, that same background stamp, but this time I heat embossed it with white embossing powder. We're going to cut out a circle in our panel that we heat embossed, and this circle is slightly larger than the one that we did earlier. Basically, we created a reverse panel, which is really nice. So instead of white and black, we used black and white. Now the circle again is about 1/4 inch larger than the one that we created earlier, and my panel size is 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it's going to leave me a little bit of a border on my card base. I went ahead and popped up my panel with black foam tape, and we adhered that to our A2 size card base. And then we're going to go ahead and take that white and black circle, that's the very first one that we did, and I'm going to add that on the inside of my window. Once that's adhered, I'm going to go ahead and add some foam adhesive behind our colorful house, and then we need a sentiment. There's lots of sentiments in the stamp set, and I think the one that we're going to use for this card is the one that says "Can't wait to see you." So I grab that, and then I'm also going to stamp the thought bubble or the speech bubble that says "Hey." I thought we'd stamp that a few times with our reactive inks. So stamp it once with Berry Smoothie. We'll stamp again with Fruit Punch. And I think maybe the lemon drop's a little too light. So I'm going to use the ink that I brought in from my stash, and we'll stamp with Key Lime Fizz. And we have some nice colorful word bubbles. And I think Key Lime Fizz might be a little bit too light. So we're going to switch that up and use Pool Party instead of the Key Lime Fizz. And then I'll use the coordinating die and die cut out all of those colorful hey speech bubbles. Now I did trim down another piece of the black cardstock, and we're going to stamp our sentiment on here a little bit towards the top. The sentiment again for this card says "Can't wait to see you." I'm going to stamp with Versamark ink, so we're going to heat emboss this with white embossing powder. And then I'm also going to take a circle die, the same circle die that I used for that inside circle, and I'm going to cut out the sentiment. So we basically have almost a half circle. And then once this is good to go, I'm going to use my scissors and create a wavy line just above the sentiment to kind of create a hillside with that. This way we can add this on the inside of our window. Let's flip this over. I'm going to add some foam squares behind it, and then this will go again on the inside of our window, just following along the curve of the inner circle here. I'll remove the release paper off of our house and we'll add that. We're going to put our house a little bit to the right here. And then we'll pop up each one of our little hay speech bubbles with some smaller foam squares, and then we'll add that to the right of the house for a little extra color. And then we're going to add a little bit of sparkle in just a little bit, but that finishes off card number 1. Now we're going to move along to card number 2. Card number 2 is a pretty easy card. We're going to take one of our panels that we created, and then I have my craft mat here, and we're going to do a little ink smushing with all of our reactive inks. So I have our berry smoothie, our fruit punch, our lemon drop, and then I'm going to bring in our key lime fizz and our pool party, and just basically kind of creating a rectangle because we're going to add some water using our spray bottle. Kind of blend all of these together, and I want a nice colorful background. Now my panel again is the Nina cardstock, so it's going to really absorb, and it does take a little bit of time to dry, but I loved just the bright pops of color on that background. I think it looks really neat. I'm going to bring in my heat gun. We'll dry this panel, and once this is good to go, it does warp a little bit, but no worries. We're going to actually directly adhere this to our card base, so I wasn't too concerned about that. I'm going to bring in a piece of black cardstock, and this is an A2 size panel, and then we're going to bring in our cover plate die. We're going to die cut out our little scene, and then in our scene you have a whole bunch of balconies. You got 2 balconies to the left and 1 balcony to the right. And when I added that to my colorful background, it just kind of got lost. But I think the balconies are really neat. So to fix that, I thought we'd bring in some Hero Art sand cardstock and just put a little bit of a neutral tone behind each one of those balconies, just so you could see them basically. And something simple like this really helps out a lot. If you want to use white cardstock, you could do that too. So once I had my little pieces of sand cardstock behind those balconies, we're going to add some glue. I'm using my Hero Art Precision Glue, and we're going to go around all the edges, and then we're going to adhere this to our watercolor smushed background here. And then once this is nice and adhered, my panel is just a little bit larger than my background, so what we're going to do is take the paper trimmer and just trim down the edges. And when I did this, I actually trimmed it down so a little bit of my card base will show. So that's the nice thing about the cover plate die. You have the option to do that too. I adhered my panel, just using my tape runner with lots and lots of adhesive to my card base. So the background's good to go. Now all we need to do is, there's a lot going on here, so I just stamped my sentiment that says, "I'm so lucky to have you in my life." I stamped that on a white circle, and then I'm going to mat that on a slightly larger black circle that came with the cardstock that came with the kit this month. And then we'll flip this over and add some foam squares behind it, and this is just going to go basically right in the middle, and I think that's all that card needs. I think there's a lot going on, and I think it's I love how easy this was actually. We'll just put this in the middle, and then card number 2 is good to go. Okay, make sure that adheres. Now we're going to continue on to our third project today. We have 2 panels, one that's heat embossed with white embossing powder on black cardstock, one that's heat embossed with clear embossing powder with black ink. So we have two panels that are the opposite of each other. Next, I don't know if you guys can see it, but on our panels, you can see the rooftop line, all those black rooftops. I'm going to use my scissors and trim along that line so we have just those black rooftops. And I'm doing this on the black cardstock. And if you wanted to take maybe a white gel pen, if you missed some areas and go over it, you could to even out those lines. And the same thing goes with our next panel. If you wanted to add, well, I'll show you here in just a minute. I'm rambling. So this is one of the little rooftop lines. Trim that off a little bit. Okay. Now we have our leftover piece from our circle and then our single house. That has a rooftop line too, and we're going to use our inks. I just left them on my acrylic block, and we're just going to do some very basic coloring. I'm not doing any blending or any mixing of colors. One house will be green, one house will be pool party, one house will be berry smoothie, and so forth. So this first house is going to be pool party, and then we're going to, second house is berry smoothie, third house is, it just continues on with all these bright colors. Now once we're done, I went ahead and cut that rooftop line on that as well. This is going to go layered behind our black and white panel here, and then our white and black panel we trimmed down. I actually used a rectangle die, guys, a smaller rectangle die that's going to leave me about 1/2 inch all around my card base. I matted my white and black panel on some black cardstock, and then I'm going to use some black foam adhesive, and then we're going to pop this up and put this in the center of our card base. Let's just remove the release paper and add this to the center. And then after this is adhered, if I can get it straight, I wanted a little bit more dimension, so we're going to add our watercolor panel directly to our black panel. Just going to add a little bit more adhesive here so that bright color is peeking out behind it. And then this panel is going to we're going to flip it around, add some more foam adhesive behind it. If you don't want all the dimension, you can skip that step, but I like the layers that it adds. So we're going to add one more layer of foam adhesive, and then the black foam adhesive is not that dimensional too, so it doesn't add that much bulk. This is going to go layered right on our panel there. Okay, after that's done, we're going to stamp our sentiment. For this card, I stamped it with black ink on some white cardstock, and it says, "Just a little note to say you're amazing." Now I wanted the width to be the perfect width of my panel, so I thought we'll just bring in the die that I used to cut out all 3 of those panels. I'm just going to line it up on my sentiment, make sure it's centered, and then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. This way I know it's the width that I need. We're going to add foam adhesive behind our sentiment and add this to the bottom of our panel. And you can see I also stamped 2 of the silhouettes of the cats that are in the stamp set. These 2 are the ones that are in the lower right corner of your stamp set. I stamped the larger kitty with my pool party reactive ink, and then the smaller one with the berry smoothie reactive ink. We're going to go ahead and pop up these kitties, and once we already adhered our "just a little note to say you're amazing," we're going to add our kitties right on top, a little bit towards the left, as if they're sitting on our sentiment there. And then that will finish off our 3rd project for today. Now I love the black and white with the bold colors, but I do want a little sparkle. So we got to bring in some of the Ranger diamond stickles, and I'm going to go over the windows on this card here, just on the watercolor windows, I should say. And then we'll bring in our "Can't Wait to See You" card. I'm going to add a little bit of sparkle to the windows on that single house that we colored in with our reactive inks. And then our 3rd card, I'm not going to add any extra sparkle. I kind of like the way this turned out, and I think that one's going to be nice just the way that it was. But those are my projects today, guys, using the Hero Arts, my monthly hero kit for December 2021. I hope you got some ideas and some inspiration with this kit. I thank you so much for joining me. Have a lovely weekend, guys. We will see you soon. Bye-bye.